Well, hey, New Life. Welcome to this video conversation I'm having with my friend Quentin, Pastor Quentin Mumphery, and just wanting to converse and talk about a very important day that is happening here today, and it is Juneteenth. And in that, I just want to introduce Pastor Quentin. So how you doing, Pastor?
I'm well. How you doing, Bobby?
Very good. I know that for many people in our church, this might be the first time that they're seeing or just being exposed to you. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Quentin Mumphery. I'm the founder and pastor of New Hope Covenant Church, Chicago. We're located on the southeast side of Chicago. We started in South Shore. We're currently in the Chatham-Avalon Park area, worshiping at 85th in Maryland.
Excellent. And I know that you just planted that church, correct?
We're 4.5 years in.
Oh, that's great. That's awesome. It's cool to see a new church being birthed in that way. And I know just seeing the different things that you share on social media and stuff is definitely growing and making an impact on that community.
Absolutely. I'm excited about the initiatives that we have. Even though we've been in quarantine in the midst of the pandemic and things that have been happening lately, we've got some great outreach initiatives that we're currently doing and that'll carry us through the summer. So I'm excited about everything that God is doing and the things that are happening in our community.
Excellent. Well, praise God for that. Well, like I said, talking about what today is and the idea of Juneteenth. I know that there's probably many people that, you and I talked about this earlier, that even myself, probably the first time I was exposed to the reality of it was 5 or 6 years ago. But for some people, just with everything happening in our country right now, this is unfortunately, a brand new thing for them, something that probably should have been known, but it's just coming to people's awareness now, is the idea of Juneteenth. And so could you just explain to people that might not have any sense of what today is or what it's about? Can you give them a little bit of an understanding of it?
Sure. Juneteenth is a day commemorating June 19th, 1965, which was the day that Major General General Granger marched into Galveston, Texas, to announce to the slaves that were there in Texas that they were free. Everyone knows from history that June 1st, 1963, President Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation. The Civil War was fought. And then in April of 1965, General Lee surrendered to General Ulysses Grant. But because there was not as heavy of a presence of Union troops in Texas, the slaves in Texas were still not aware that they were free. Which happened in other parts of the South where there was a heavier presence of Union troops. So that's the day that General Granger landed in Galveston, Texas, and announced to the slaves that they were now free. But I think it's also important to note that one of the reasons that this day is so important is because of the significance of the freeing of slaves, and the fact that one of the many years even before that, or even after that, Frederick Douglass had written a piece called "What Meaneth the 4th of July to the Negro," and in it he talked about the significance of the 4th of July and why many slaves and blacks at that time had not celebrated the 4th of July because they were not free on the 4th of July. The irony that it was the day of American independence, but on that day it was not a day for Black independence. And so Juneteenth is viewed as a day of Black independence because it's the day that that group of slaves was ended. That was a marker in the ending of slavery. But I think it's also important to note that that does not mean that every slave in the country was free on June 19th, 1965. It's well documented that in certain rural parts of the South, there were actually people who were still kept in slavery even into the 1960s. So because they simply did not know, they were not told that they were free. And, there were when we talk about the Reconstruction period and the compromise that was struck with President Hayes, that there was a withdrawal of Union troops, which ended the period of Reconstruction and led to a period of post-Reconstruction, which led to things like the Black codes in the South. And it was during that period that a lot of the racial restrictions and things happened. The system of sharecropping was developed. So there was a more sophisticated system of slavery after that. But June 19th, 1865 is an important symbolic day because it is a reminder of the legal, not only the legal, well, the legal ending of slavery happened January 1st, 1963, but it was a freeing of some slaves who were not free from that period 2 years earlier.
Wow, I didn't, of all of that, I did not know about the connection with July 4th and with Frederick Douglass. That is very fascinating. And,
Yeah.
And again, even what you said, the rich history of it happening on this day, but obviously there's just for people not knowing and the residual effect of that. When you think about this day today, why is this significant today for people, looking back and just you personally?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's significant today because when we talk about the history of racism and racial relations in the United States, for so many years, African Americans have really, on some levels, existed as kind of this parallel, almost two separate realities in our nation. And so the importance of Juneteenth is a day to celebrate Black independence, to celebrate the time in which our ancestors, for any person who was Black and American, who's a descendant of slaves. I mean, my grandparents were sharecroppers, and their grandparents were actually slaves. So, it is a day where we celebrate the sacrifices of generations who have gone before us. It is a day where we celebrate independence and freedom and liberty. But it's a day where we also are reminded of the fact that America's independence did not necessarily mean our own independence at that time, and that there was a fight, that there was a struggle to earn and to gain rights, to gain standing. The whole notion of equal protection under the law. It was Dr. King who declared that America had written a check that came back insufficient funds. America had written a check to Black people that came back insufficient funds when it declared that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men were created equal. Because at the time that was written, African Americans were not considered men; they were not considered human. So when it was declared that all men were created equal, that didn't mean us.
Yeah.
So, Juneteenth is a day to celebrate Black independence, but also to celebrate Black humanity. That there is a way in which our humanity was denied through slavery, that we were viewed as property and chattel and not human beings. So it's a day of celebration. It's a day of commemoration. It's a day of remembrance, and it's a day of honoring, like I said, the sacrifice, the pain, the suffering, and the struggle that generations before us endured.
Wow. And how about just you personally, as a pastor, as an African American in our country now? What does this mean to you personally?
It means a couple of different things for me. As I said, my grandparents were sharecroppers. My dad was from southern Georgia. My grandparents were sharecroppers. So, and for those who don't know about the sharecropping system, at that time, the sharecropping system was a kind of more sophisticated form of slavery.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't have time to kind of go into all of that. But yeah, it was basically a form of slavery where Black families, even after slavery, were kind of kept in bondage. So for me personally, it's a day where I think about, and I remember sitting and talking to my grandmother about how she would pick 200 pounds of cotton a day. So it's a reminder of that, of thinking about the sacrifices, like I said, of even my own grandparents. It's also for me a reminder that there has been some strides forward. There has been some movement. We have come a long way, but there is yet a long way to go. And I think that it's a reminder of both the past and the present. It's kind of what I call a Sankofa moment. The Sankofa, you hear the term sometimes as taken from the Sankofa bird that actually walks forward by looking back. And so it is a Sankofa moment where we move toward the future, but as we remember what has gone, those who have gone before us, and as we remember what we've been through. So for me personally, it's a day of thankfulness, and but also a day where I just kind of marvel at the strength and the fortitude of those who have gone before me, of the generations before me, those on whose shoulders I now stand. To think about generations who it was literally illegal for them to know how to read and write, and to now see their grandchildren and great-grandchildren who are college educated, who are business owners, who are leaders and who are successful in various fields. But it's also a reminder that we have to continue to work to make things better, to make to make this whole notion of a true society. I don't really care for this term colorblind. I think that it is a myth. A lot of times we hear people say, well, I'm not racist, I don't see color. Well, I think that's a myth, one, because for someone to say that I'm colorblind, in essence, you're saying you don't see me. Because God created us different. God created us and made us with uniqueness. And Revelation chapter 7, verse 9 said that there was a crowd around the throne from every tribe, every nation, every tongue, and every people group. So if God was colorblind, how would they know that in heaven there were people from every tribe, if everyone looked alike and it was just the same, it was just monolithic assembly. So what that lets me know is that I don't believe that God is colorblind, but I believe that God embraces the uniqueness of humanity, that we are God's children, we are God's creation. The Bible says that we are his likeness, created in Christ unto good works, right? Psalm 139 declares we are fearfully and wonderfully made. So I believe that it is a call to not say that we need a colorblind society, but we need to work toward a world where there is truly justice, where there is where we eliminate racism in all its forms and all of its expressions, and that we work to really fulfill the dreams of our ancestors.
Yeah. Man, just hearing you share too, I mean, you mentioned your grandparents. I can't imagine how proud they would be of just what you're doing and the impact that you're having on your community. It's phenomenal.
Thank you.